I was leaving an exhibition in Cleveland when I saw my mother across the street selling my artwork for cash. The same mother who cut me out of the will, who kicked me out of the house I was born in, now using my name to survive, as if nothing had ever happened. I elbowed through the crowd until I stopped in front of the booth, and there she was, my mother. Red lipstick, expensive sunglasses, and a fake smile glued to her face. Behind her, stacked on a paint-stained easel, were my paintings. My strokes, my signature erased with cheap varnish. She was selling my art as if it were her own. I didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't announce myself. I just watched as a couple bought one of the watercolors I painted during the worst winter of my life, and my mother accepted $300 in cash, as if she had any right to touch anything that came from me. 3 years ago, this same woman kicked me out of the house I was born in, cut me out of the will, said my talent was nothing but a childish whim and that art didn't pay the bills. If this story touched you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more truth coming your way. That day, something inside me broke. But before all of this, long before, I was just the daughter who painted in secret with her father in the basement of a blue house in Lakewood, Ohio. My name is Lillian Moore, and I grew up surrounded by paint, silence, and cold stares. My father was an architect and saw beauty even in the cracks of the wall. He used to say, "Painting is building shelter with your hands." When my mother left for charity parties or spa weekends, we turned the basement into a studio. She said the smell of turpentine gave her headaches. In truth, she couldn't stand seeing my father smile over something that didn't involve her. At 9, I painted my first portrait of him. At 14, I won a state contest. At 18, I got into an art school in Chicago with a partial scholarship. My mother showed up at graduation with a look so empty it hurt more than her absence. But my father, he hugged me like someone who knew the world outside would devour me. And when he found out about the cancer, he asked me to come home. I dropped everything without a second thought. Caring for him was more important than any scholarship, any ambition. I spent months by his bedside, bringing watercolors to the hospital, painting with him when he could still hold a brush. In his final days, he told me, "Take care of our house, Lil. The house is yours now." And I believed him. At the funeral, my mother was flawless. Dressed in Chanel black, dry eyes, rehearsed speech. She said Michael was a respectable man, a notable architect, and a devoted husband. Not once did she mention the daughter who left the big city to care for him when she didn't have the courage to face his decline. 2 weeks later, I was summoned to the family lawyer's office. I arrived with cold hands, but a sliver of hope. My father had always made silent promises. He knew, he saw. The lawyer opened the envelope and read, "All movable and immovable assets, including the residence in Lakewood, the art collection, and the joint bank account, shall be inherited by Margot Sanders Donovan." I stopped listening right then. My name wasn't in a single line. "Sorry, there must be a mistake," I interrupted. My father told me, "The house, the studio." My mother adjusted her sunglasses and, for the first time in months, spoke directly to me. "Your father changed his mind. He realized you wouldn't know how to handle such responsibility. It's not personal, Lillian. It's practical." She spoke of me like I was an incompetent assistant. And the worst part? Everyone around accepted it. The lawyer, the family friends. Even my older sister, Juliet, who looked away and only murmured, "It's for the best, Lil. Best for whom?" 30 days later, I received a curt email. "Please collect your belongings by the end of the month. The house will be listed for sale. Avoid causing embarrassment." As if my existence was a disgrace. I returned to the house where I was born with one suitcase and one box. I took what I could. A few sketchbooks, my favorite brushes, one of my dad's jackets, and a photo album hidden behind the books. The rest stayed. She forbade me from taking any paintings off the wall. Said they now belong to the Donovan collection, even mine. The paintings I made at 16, 19, 23, the portraits he loved and hung like medals in the hallways, all of it became her property. Margot didn't want the artwork, she wanted control. She wanted the trophy. And I was just the sketch of a daughter she never approved of. I left the house without looking back, moved to a cramped studio in Toledo, shared the space with a textile artist who barely spoke to me, started painting on recycled paper with expired paints, selling portraits by commission on Etsy, slept with 2 blankets and a coat. But there was one thing she couldn't take from me, the memory. My father's voice saying, "Art is your name." And it was there in the back of that freezing room that I began to rebuild my identity. With pain, with anger, with longing, but also with something Margot never understood, truth. What I didn't know was that 3 years later, she would use my artwork to survive, and I would be the only person capable of deciding whether she deserved that or not. I spent weeks trying not to disappear. I didn't want to get up. The alarm would ring and I'd just let it ring until the phone died. I was afraid to open the fridge because sometimes there was only 1 egg and a glass of expired milk. Every knock on the door gave me an irrational panic that someone had come to tell me I owed something, that I didn't belong there. But no one knocked because no one remembered I existed. My mother had made it her mission to erase me from the map. When an old friend of my father messaged me on Instagram asking why I no longer lived in the Lakewood house, Margot replied for me. She chose another path. Artists go through those phases. Rage kept me warm, even in Ohio's freezing winters. I printed old pictures of the Blue House, tried to redraw it room by room so I wouldn't forget where I belonged, but my hand trembled. I wanted to cry, but the anger wouldn't let me. It was as if something inside me screamed not to break, even when everything begged me to surrender. It was during this time that I received an unexpected message. "Do you do custom portraits? My son passed away and I'd like to immortalize him with something special. I was told you can capture what can't be seen." I stared at the screen for minutes. Someone saw something in me. Someone needed me. I replied with a nearly childlike yes. Then I spent 3 whole days trying to paint that 5-year-old boy with the wings his mother had described in her emails. When I delivered it, she cried so much she turned off her webcam during the call. Later, she wrote to me, "You brought my son back to me. I'll never forget your name." That sentence made me get up, made me paint more. People started reaching out. One referral led to another. It was never much money, but it was enough to not get to sleep hungry. Meanwhile, my mother and sister hosted charity dinners, pretended everything was fine, posted photos on Instagram as if the Blue House hadn't been sold for peanuts after sitting empty for months. I remained invisible. And even so, I kept growing, silently. My name started to spread again. Not as Michael's daughter, but as the artist who paints pain. And little by little, those works began to reach people in places I'd never imagined. A year later, an art critic from the Cleveland scene discovered me by accident. She contacted me saying a client had shown her a portrait that moved her deeply. She found me at a small local artist fair in the suburbs of Sandusky. "Are you Lillian Moore?" I nodded, shoulders hunched. I always felt that name was too small for so much pain. Michael Donovan's daughter? That question froze me. My greatest fear was that, once again, my name would be reduced to a shadow. But what she said next stopped me cold. "Then you're his true heir." I didn't know how to respond. But she gave me her card and asked to see more work. A week later, she published a column titled, "The Forgotten Daughter, the Art Margot Donovan Tried to Bury." The article went viral. It was shared by hundreds of people. And for the first time, I was contacted by national press. Not to talk about the inheritance, but the art. My art that same month, I got a call from my sister, Juliet. "Lillian, we need to talk. Mom is struggling." I thought it was a joke, but she continued, "She is selling your paintings, the ones that had been stored since the Lakewood house, and now she's using your name." The silence between us hurt more than any scream. "She wants to meet with you," Juliet added. I closed my eyes and asked, my voice cold, "Why now?" Her answer sent a chill through me, because she knows that now the world is finally listening to you. The last thing I expected in that moment was compassion, but it came not from my mother, not from my sister. It came from strangers. Messages started arriving every day. People who had lost children, husbands, homes, parents. People carrying painful memories and wanting to eternalize them with color. I replied to each one, and with every brushstroke, I felt my chest slowly stitching itself back together. I took part of the money from those first sales and rented a tiny space in Cleveland, on a side street near East 55th. It was an old, decommissioned laundromat damp with cracked walls and a rough cement floor. But it had a window, and light, and silence. It was everything I needed. I made it my new studio. I called it Margin because that's where everything in me had stayed for a while, on the margins. At first, shame still paralyzed me. It was as if my mother's voice lived in my head, saying, "This isn't a real job." But I painted anyway, with fear, with anger, with faith. The first month at Margin was unstable. I painted all day, through the night, ate whatever cheap food I could find, and taped the watercolors to the wall with masking tape. Some pieces I sold for $30. Others I gave away just to see someone smile. But every compliment felt like a fresh patch on my torn-up soul. With every new portrait delivered, my name gained weight. Someone would refer me to someone else, who'd refer me to another. I was invited to show at a regional fair in Columbus, then at an alternative gallery called Raw Threads. My paintings were about pain, but also about permanence, and that moved people. One person wrote in an email, "I never liked art until I saw yours. There's something in it that makes me breathe." I remember the day a woman named Elena walked into the studio with a box. Inside were letters her mother had written to her husband while he was at war. She wanted a panel that represented absence, but also waiting. Once spent days reading those letters, got lost in them, felt the weight of every comma, as if they were hers. And mine too. When I delivered the piece, she cried in silence, hugged me for 5 whole minutes, then simply said, "Thank you for bringing him back to me." Those moments rebuilt me. My story still wasn't public, but my art was. And somehow, that was enough. I still slept on the floor, wrapped in blankets with unpaid bills piling up. But now there was a flame burning where there used to be only darkness. That's when I found my father's notebook again. He used to write little messages to me on the back of his blueprints, tiny reminders of who I was. I found a yellowed sheet with a note in blue ink. "Lillian, the only artist who made me feel more than see. One day the world will understand." The words wrecked me. I sat on the studio floor and cried for everything. For the absence, for the injustice, for the hunger I endured, and for still holding on. That very same month, I got an unexpected invitation. The Cleveland Museum of Contemporary Art was selecting 7 local artists for an exhibition called Visible Scars. The theme was the impact of memory on the body and the city. Someone I still don't know who submitted my name. I thought about declining. I didn't feel worthy. I thought no one wanted to see what I had to say. But when I received the official email with the event poster, I couldn't stop staring at the image. My name was there, in big letters. Lillian Moore. I thought of my father, of the easel on the porch, of cold mornings holding a brush in small hands. I thought of how he would have smiled if he had seen it, how he would have squeezed my hand tight and said, "You did this, you alone." The setup for the exhibit was quiet. One submitted 3 pieces. One of them, the most important, the blue house. But instead of paint, I created it from layers of torn paper, stitched together with red thread, fragmented, like me. The show's curator, a stern woman named Grace Halpern, was moved when she saw it. She said she had never seen pain represented in such an intimate, non-invasive way, that my work had the delicacy of a well-healed scar. I just smiled. It was all I had to offer. Opening night was surreal. People I had never seen stop to photograph my work. A journalist from New York asked for an interview. A book editor asked if I would illustrate a cover. And in the middle of it all, I saw someone standing at the entrance, watching from afar. It was Juliet, my sister. She saw me, but didn't come in. She stood there, silent, with a look I didn't recognize. Not arrogance, not remorse. It was empty. The next day, I received a call from the number I had avoided for years. It was my mother. "Lillian, we need to talk." My mother's voice was still the same. Cold, controlled, like she was about to negotiate a real estate deal, not speak to the daughter she had thrown out. "I'm in Cleveland this week," she said. "Can we grab a coffee?" My immediate urge was to hang up, but I took a deep breath. Maybe it was time to look into her eyes and face what I never dared to before. I chose a small cafe on East 4th, where the music was low and the space tight enough that no one could pretend not to see the other. She arrived on time, wore a beige overcoat and an exaggerated silk scarf. She didn't look different, but something in her was dimmed, like the varnish had started to crack. "You're doing well," she said, glancing around like the place was beneath me. "I'm alive," I replied. The silence between us was a minefield. Then she got straight to the point. "I made mistakes. Many. And I didn't expect things to get this hard after selling the house." I didn't answer, just stared. She swallowed hard. "Some of your pieces that were with me, I sold them. And now people keep coming, wanting more, but I don't have anything left." "And you've grown so much, Lillian." She said my name like she still had some right to it. "What exactly do you want?" She hesitated, then awkwardly admitted, "I thought maybe you could help me. A partnership. Your name is hot right now. And I still know a lot of people ... The words hung between us like smoke from an old fire. It was surreal. The woman who once said my art was childish now wanted to profit from it. I stood up, but didn't leave. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It was a copy of the letter my father had written to me, the one that said, "You're the artist who made me feel more than see." I placed it on the table in front of her. "You didn't believe in me when it mattered most. Now that others believe, you want to come close. But I don't need that anymore." She tried to touch my arm. I pulled back. "Margot, you're no longer my mother. You're just someone who got left behind." I walked out of there with a mix of pain and relief. For the first time, I had said what needed to be said, out loud. The next day, the Visible Scars exhibit was featured on an international art portal. My painting of the fragmented blue house was chosen as the symbol of the show. The article read, "Lillian Moore reveals how memory burns and still rebuilds. A true artist, heir to her own pain." I started receiving invitations for talks, interviews. Then came a special one in the mail. The Montauk Art Festival, New York, one of the most prestigious events for emerging artists. They wanted an original, exclusive series. I spent 3 months working in silence at the Marcham studio. I named the series Broken Inheritances, 7 paintings, each one created on actual pieces of wood salvaged from demolished old homes in Ohio. In every piece, I rebuilt parts of the blue house, but this time my way, with vibrant colors, flowers in the cracks, and open windows. The festival was a success. I received praise that left me speechless. A major collector bought 2 paintings on the first day. A gallery owner from San Francisco offered me a contract, and a book publisher asked permission to use one of the images as the cover of a collection on forgiveness. One night, after a presentation, a young woman named Charlotte approached me. "Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that my mom read your story and decided to start painting again. She abandoned art after years of being ignored, but your interview reminded her who she was." I held back tears. Her art returned because of mine. That was it. That's why I endured it all. At the end of the festival, I received an unexpected message. It was from Juliet. "Mom's not well. The sales stopped. She's asking to talk to you." Again. This time, I didn't hesitate to reply. She had her chance. Juliet insisted. Said our mother was sick, that she had nothing left, that she'd been selling fake artwork under my name and now it had backfired on her. She has nowhere to go. She's apologizing, for real. The news shook me, but not because of the apology, because of the irony. Margot Donovan, the woman who mocked my art, was now begging for scraps of it to survive. And the worst part? The world knew. The email she sent me was short, almost impersonal. "Lillian, I need help. I have no place, no money. I heard you're doing well. I'm happy for you. I'm not asking for much, just a chance." I reread that message 7 times. There was no remorse in it, just desperation. And swallowed pride. Margot had always been good with words, manipulating them. But now it seemed she couldn't even hold that up anymore. It took me a week to respond. and I only did so after visiting one specific place, the Blue House. It was abandoned. Overgrown grass, dirty windows, a ceiling crack that looked like a lightning bolt frozen in time. I approached slowly. The front door was locked with chains, but I peered through the foggy glass. It was still my house, or at least what was left of it. I thought of everything I had lived there. The paint-scented basement, mornings with my father, the muffled screams, the silence after death. I went back to Cleveland with my mind made up. I couldn't change the past, but I could decide what to do with the present. I scheduled the meeting at my studio. No cafes, no formalities. She arrived looking worn down, thinner, hair tied back carelessly. The same woman who once posed for society columns now looked invisible. The way I once was. She walked in slowly, looked around cautiously, like she expected to be kicked out. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, eyes to the floor. I led her to a wall in the studio where 7 new works hung, the Broken Inheritances series. She recognized every room, every detail. The flowers, the glued papers, the strokes she once called childish. "I want to say I'm sorry," she finally said, "but I don't know how to do that without sounding fake." "Then don't say anything," I replied. "Just listen." She nodded. "You erased me, tore me apart, laughed at me in front of strangers. And when you saw I bloomed in spite of it, you tried to come back to reap something you never watered. That's not regret. That's desperation." She started to cry, softly, for the first time without theatrics. I kept going. I won't pretend it didn't hurt, or that it still doesn't, but I've learned to turn all of that into art, into truth, into voice. I opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside is the contact of a temporary shelter. Good people, they help women in vulnerable situations. You can start there, build something of your own, without my name. She hesitated, took the envelope with trembling hands, looked at me with red eyes. "Can't I stay here, work with you?" "No, my art is not a bridge for those who destroyed the path." We said goodbye without a hug. She left without a word, and I remained standing there in front of the wall that held the paintings born from the pain she caused me. That night, I slept with the window open. The November wind came in gently. There was no fear, no emptiness, just space, a space that was mine. The following week, I took part in an awards ceremony for young artists rebuilding communities through art. Each of us received a wooden plaque with a word chosen specifically for us. Mine read, "Belong," I smiled. And for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged not to a house, not to a name, but to myself.